Hey, good morning, channel. So this video, I just suddenly thought about doing this, and uh, for a couple of reasons. So let me try it and see if it works. I've been watching these videos like where people are talking about how they're living in their cars and homeless, and they're sharing ideas about where to live and how and everything like that. And many times I want to tell what I did when I was in a certain state, that same state, but I've been holding it as a little secret all these years. And when I say secret, I mean all this time I thought, well, I don't want to broadcast this location because I just wanted to protect the sanctity of the place by not broadcasting it. However, I just thought, okay, um, if I show this area, there's a pretty fat chance that anybody's going to even want to do this or go there. Because like when I found, okay, so the backstory is just and also I'm kind of like celebrating. It's been like a half a century since, or a little over half a century since I lived like this with no car, and I just hitchhiked around to place for several years in a row. And this location is where I attempted to live, and I stayed out there a few times during the spring and summer. But one winter, I went out here to attempt to live the whole winter, and I would have been fine and stayed out there, but there was this flash flood that came down there, the biggest flood in 80 years. That's 8 decades. I hadn't seen a flood like that. And it kind of ruined my plan, if you want to say that way. But I thought I would really mention this now because it will be me letting go of a secret in a way. And it might actually, there might be somebody that will actually want to go check it out. And that would be really interesting if someone wanted to go check it out, because when I was out there, there wasn't no cameras, no flash, there wasn't any way to communicate with the outside world. And it's a remote area, but the reason that like I found it accidentally with a couple of friends when we went to, and I'll just go ahead and tell you guys where it is. If you go to New Mexico, this is Glenwood, New Mexico. So if you go to San Francisco Hot Springs, which is about 5 miles, forgive me if I don't do this too good, 5 miles south of Glenwood, and it's about 50 or so miles north of Silver City, New Mexico. So if you go north on Highway 180, boy, this is going to feel good to share this finally, because I made some videos about the location without saying where it is. But if you find your way to San Francisco Hot Springs, that's online, a bit of that. And then there's a few videos that show that area and how to get there. But I haven't found anybody that's, okay, so basically what happened, a bunch of us kids, somebody had a car. We went to the hot springs, just to go there. This was back in the 70s. And we stayed a couple of days at the hot springs where the river was, and the water was just so pure and good. And the hot springs were so pure and good that I was very healthy in those days. And I got very spoiled on living where there was this fresh river water. You could just lay in the river and drink it as it went past you. You know what I mean? It was like really good water. And then I had all kind of physical, like I had gum disease kind of issues and everything. But when I lived there and I drank, okay, so here's Pleasanton, which is below Glenwood. And the road that goes to the hot springs, if only I could see where I'm going. I'm looking for 180. Well, you can kind of look it up, San Francisco Hot Springs. And there's a like when I was there was no house and no campsite or anything, but now there is. But anyway, when we stayed there, so then I went back alone a few months later because I knew that I could live there on this river where there was a hot spring and camp there, and it was so accommodating. It was so beautiful. It was like there was sand everywhere. And there was two springs that now there's a house on the canyon above it, which is kind of a bummer. So I had a good time being there when there was. See, here's the campground. It's called Sundial Hot Springs now, and there's a campground here, so you can actually call her up. And if you have an RV, you could stay out there. And her house, she built this house right there. I don't know how she acquired the land shortly after my experience in that area. So there's hot springs down here where you would drive in. See right here. You drive in and you could camp there. This isn't her property. But if you wanted to stay where she is, you have to make reservations, all that. But you could park. And then she took what she did that people got upset with, that I can see why, is that she has a pump system that pumps the hot spring water from down here. And so she doesn't do it constantly. So if she knows somebody's reserving a space to stay, they've made some beautiful rock pools up here and all that. So it's real accommodating. So therefore you don't have to go on the riverbank, because when we found it, the hot water was coming up right along the side of the cold river, and we would just dig out a nice hole and sit in the hot water and then just roll out and go into the cold river. It was like paradise. It was so nice. And the spring water was good. There was no infections. By the way, don't donk your head into that, because somebody did get some sort of parasite in their ear and everything after swimming around in the hot springs. That's at least what they said. And then this lady bought this place and they put a house there, and it's almost like she kind of monitors the area. Anyway, in general, if it's water like that, it's not a good idea often to submerge your whole head in it, in case, something might go in your ear or whatever. But I never had any problem there. So anyway, I'm rambling on. But I guess like people that live, they're homeless, tend to stay around big cities. Well, for those of us like I was, the farther away from people, the better I felt. But I realized my main basic needs were water, shelter, and, anything luxurious like a hot bath and occasional people coming down. Now, there's not many people even to this day. This is why it's so weird when I'm talking about it, because this area is somewhat remote. I used to go to Silver City and get food stamps and then come up here. I'd buy food and then stay out here for 2 weeks at a time before I had to go back to town or anything. Now, if you have a car, see, why I'm saying this is because there are people that won't even have a car, and maybe men more than women, who might actually think about visiting this area to find what I really want to talk about. Okay, so there's hot springs. Well, then I met a friend on another visit to the hot springs, and we started walking, and we walked just to see what was down here. We walked down this canyon, and see how boxy it gets? It got boxy. And it was so beautiful. And back then, the ranchers would let their cattle pass through here. So the cows had made a really nice path through all the mesquite. There were areas where there was a lot of foliage, but the cows, because their bodies are so wide, everywhere they walk, they bust open the bushes, the length, the height of a human. It's better than a deer, which are skinnier, small animals, so it was a really nice trail. Anyway, it was like 4 of us took this walk. And we're just walking, and then we got to Big Dry Creek, and there actually is a 4-wheel, like you can, when the river's really low, you can take a 4-wheel drive or whatever from the highway, Leopold Vista area, I think where Big Dry is. But anyway, the point being, occasionally when I and I stayed there different times, but in general, sometimes I would see, sometimes a vehicle would come down there and cross the river, and there was like a picnic table right here. But only if you're really local or someone tells you, do you even know any of this goes on? So, and I still, for preservation's sake, but the reason, but the funny part was, all right, well, let me continue this part. Okay, so we walked and walked, and then we were walking here, and then the guy that I was with, we were a couple. I was with this guy, and then there was this other couple with us. The guy I was with said, well, I'm going to go ahead of you guys because we were going too slow for him. It's a very easy walk. Up to here is about 10 or 15 crossings of the river, and the river was low. It was like paradise. It was so beautiful, and it was not a big deal to cross the river when it was below your knees, right? So anyway, he went ahead, and then he came back and he said, hey, you guys, I found this cave. So we followed him, and if it wasn't for him finding it, this wouldn't have happened for me anyway. Okay, so we went and went and went, and I, ever since Google Earth, like the first time Google Earth came out, I was like, oh, let's go see if the cave area really was empty, because I used to hear weird shit out there. Like I would hear a generator sound and everything. I thought there was a ranch above me, but anyway, there's all these, so we walked and walked, and then, and that's what I wanted to do, is tell you guys where this cave is, because, and describe it to you, because I can't show you the exact bend where it is. I've looked and looked. I think I know. I think I know where it is looking down, but it's pretty hard. And then if you don't know it's there, you would walk right past it, because it's on this side of the river. And when I first looked down, I found this shape like a heart, where I think the cave was in this rock. Okay, so anyway, so all you have to do is, okay, from the hot springs, and I walked this trip a lot of times. It's about 28, 29, 27, but generally 28 crossings from the hot springs to where the cave is. So if you walk or take a horse or whatever, or take a Jeep, if you walk, it's 28 river crossings, and then you should be on the bank where the cave is. And the way that you'll, yeah, I'm sorry, I don't know how to do this. Go away. I don't want that there. The way that you will, when you've done those 28 crossings, on your right, you'll see these 3 tall sycamore trees. I don't think they've been flooded out, but the flood that I was in, this sucker was in the middle of winter when you think it's not going to rain. Well, it rained for 3 days straight in 1978. And I was trapped back here for 10 days. You don't want that to happen, but I thought I'd be safe over winter, because in general I thought, oh, the Southwest doesn't get a lot of rain in the winter. Well, yes, it did. And there were giant cottonwood trees going down here and everything. But these sycamore trees are up against the cliff. And the reason I'm even, yeah, this is where I think it is. But you can take those numbers if you want. But the reason, because I've been on here like looking down close up, Google Earth was like cheating to see all these places. Anyway, when you do the 28 crossings, and the last time, let's see, in 96, we passed through there, and there was a guy that had a mule that he was living back there. So, and we knew there's another cave over here too that this couple lived in. I have a lot of stories about it. But the reason that we even thought of staying here, when I say cave, it was not a deep, dark cave. No, it's like 20 feet high. Let me think, 20. Yeah, maybe 15, 20 feet high. And it's a shallow cave. It goes back like another 20 feet. So the sun, a certain time of day, the sun shines right in it. It's like a big domey room, and you could see the decades of fire, like the fire pit is right against the back of the cave, and the smoke just goes straight up the top. And you could see when we got there, like, must be hundreds of years of people living back there and stuff like that with all the smoke. And then there were also paintings. There was like on the side of the rock was like this red ochre kind of half moon thing. But anyway, but the reason that we were so excited to find it was because across the front of it, well, inside were these two tables, like 6 foot long, hardwood, sturdy tables, like picnic type tables, two of them. One went across the front of the cave, and the other one was on the side. And then there was this little gate, like fenced little gate, cute little gate with like barbed wire fence in front of it. Now, that doesn't look as bad as it sounds, but obviously somebody had built these tables and this little gate fence thing to keep big animals out, I guess, in front of the entrance of the cave, which was a wide entrance. You know, it's like this huge entrance, but the three sycamore trees are smack in front of the entrance, so it's like shaded. And we discovered things like flies don't go in the cave, mosquitoes wouldn't go in there. And like I say, it wasn't very deep at all, but something kept them out. So when we saw those tables, and that's why when the guy I was with came back, he said, "Oh, I found this cave, you should come." And the floor was flat and everything. And in the front was this like big grassy area. It was just wonderful. So the four of us stayed there overnight. For a couple nights, we built a little sauna and everything and did a sweat lodge on the thing, you know, in the sand. And me and the guy I was with slept in the cave that night. But it was just so cool. And, you know, back then it was like, you know, I and some other people, well, I had a friend in Washington State. He lived in a different kind of cave. So I was just mostly gravitating, hanging out with people that that knew where to go live, where you wouldn't be bothered. Not only that, but a year or so later, when I found myself going back there and trying to live for the winter, I went to Silver City to get food stamps. And this is really interesting to see if it would be the same. This is 50 years ago, right? So I went back there and she goes, "Well, where do you live?" And I told her about the cave, and she had a big map on her wall. She goes, "Oh, show me where it is." So I pointed it out and she goes, "Oh, yeah, I know that place." She goes, she told me her and her husband went hiking down there. And then she authorized me to have food stamps. And they did that in Arizona back then. There was another spot near Verde Valley where we lived on the river, and we went to that town to get food stamps. And the social worker's like, "Where do you live?" And we told her about Verde Hot Springs, because basically we were hot. I mean, I myself and some people I was with, you just would live around hot springs, where usually there's a river, and you would just camp there. And if you didn't have a car, it made it even easier. And also the rangers didn't bother us, and back then in those days, not here either, even though they knew I was out here, because when she gave me food stamps, I didn't realize how everything was known back then. But I thought, oh, she's the only one that knows. No, it's in the records, you know. So, you know, the government knew I was there. Let's put it that way. Anyway, so it's very accommodating. And then on the second time we went out there, I went back there with the boyfriend a month or two later or something, and he had a friend named Mountain and Jeannie, his wife, and they had a baby. And they lived in a different cave that was up by Mule Creek. So if you're in the town of Mule Creek, I've never entered the canyon for Mule Creek, which is along 78, I think, is the road that goes into Arizona. Yeah, I'm telling this big secret about this place that's just like heaven. It's just like heaven. Like you could take a hot bath and then go out and live in that cave. So, that winter, long story short, I still wasn't ready to ever live a civilized life ever again. So this, the attitude I had was that I did not, being on the grid to me back then meant getting a job and a car and a house, and I didn't want any of it. I just didn't want to live in a town or a city at all. So this was like the next best thing to me. But let me just say this. So we went back, and Mountain knew this area, that was his name, very well. So he went to the river and he scoped around and he found this big boulder in one of these areas here. And we watched him. I'd never seen this. I was like 18 years old or 19 or something, 20. I had never seen this before. So he studied the river and we watched. And he just slowly stuck his hands and his arm length into the water underneath this huge boulder. And he pulled out a catfish with his hands that was freaking like 2 feet, 3 feet long. 4 of us couldn't eat it all that night. He just caught a catfish. So that told me, oh, there's catfish. Oh, I'll just learn how to do that. And then I went to the library in Silver City and got a bunch of books because there's different plants that you could use and eat down here. So when I was going to stay out there in the winter, I went out there and then on this other visit, when we were staying in the cave, suddenly these 2 men came up on horseback to the front of the cave. Me and the guy I was with were there, and we were really surprised. We did see an occasional hiker person walk past, and one day we saw a car come. We heard this car coming down with a Jeep with kids in it, and they went right past us because they didn't know it was there. So all you have to do is stay really still. If you hear a Jeep coming, and if they don't know the cave is there, the sycamore trees would camouflage the entrance, is what I'm trying to say. But so the guys with horseback came, and guess what? One of the men on horseback was this older gentleman, cowboy guy. He was the one that lived at the cave, and he told us, he said that he strung barbed wire for the government for 3 years, and he lived there, and he's the one that built the tables and the gate and the fence. There he was. It was great. And the fact that he said he had lived there for 3 years told me that I could live there over the winter. Because if he did, the water didn't ever flood high enough to get in the cave, is what we thought. He never told me he got flooded out or that the riverbank got cut by the flood. The river cut a whole new bank and made it yucky. So that was what made me come back, because he had lived there, and built that stuff, and having tables, it was sort of civilized, let's put it that way. And it was far enough away that I didn't feel any danger. I felt really safe. Okay, so I'm just saying that. And I just want to share that because, like I used to have all these dreams, like about the future where I'm walking down there with some people, like I'm taking a little nature hike with other people, like a tourist person does. And the last time I was in this area was like 6 or 7 years ago, and they stopped running cattle, and the place is choked up as heck. When I looked down from the hot springs at that canyon, and I thought to myself, what in the fuck was I thinking? Because you're out there, and I was never afraid in the sense that people would be afraid. But nowadays, in my opinion, if you have a phone, you're never off the grid. This thing is your electricity, this is your telephone bill, this is your computer bill. So you're plugged into electronics when you have this. And a lot of things now I don't know how much this online business is going to last for the general public, or how easy it's going to be to communicate, or for me even, but I just thought I'd share this because in 78 there was that big flood, and the river didn't come into the cave floor, but little rivulets came out of the river between the mesquite trees. There's a bunch of mesquite down there, and the floor of the cave was full of water, and I ended up sleeping on one of those tables that he had built. If it wasn't for those tables, I would have been just standing up in floodwater in the middle of the night. That's how high the water was, and I didn't expect it to ever come inside of the cave itself. And I didn't have flashlights or anything. I had matches. So I'm standing there the third day of rain. Everything was soaked. All my library books got buried in the mud. I had food got buried in the mud. One of the tables had a shelf under it, and I had things stored there, but the water level came up below the table, and I kept lighting matches. I was like in a panic because it was night, and I thought that the water was all the way in the cave, but when the morning came, I saw it wasn't. But still, all this stuff got buried, including my blue suede moccasins. Those were my main shoes. They got buried. And so the next morning, the floor of the cave suddenly had a couple more inches of mud that when it got hard, which took a few days because I was back there for 10 days before I got out, it buried all my stuff. And all these years, I'm wondering if anybody ever dug up the floor of the cave and found my blue suede shoes. And all these years, I thought, oh, I'm going to go back and do a walking tour, arrange it. You know how they say, like, oh, if you live your full potential, you'll do things like that. Think of all the money I could make by people paying me to take them on a walk here, and not bring their phones. and live and not take anything, not even a camera, not even a flashlight. Just walk back there and spend the night and walk back out. I thought about that. You could charge a lot of money. But if I had my act together, but so I may never do that, because what I want to do is go out there and dig up the floor of the cave and see if any of my stuff is down there. Or did other people dig up the floor of the cave and find things? Like, I had bags of food that got buried. Those library books, oh my God. I had a stack of library books on herbs and stuff. And they got buried. So that's how much silt and clay got pushed into there by that water. That was a long time ago. Now, so I for a while I had these series of dreams that it was, oh my God, I've had a whole bunch. Maybe this is why I'm making the video, because I had a whole bunch of future dreams. I can remember them all and say them all in detail right now, but for the most part, they had to do with me being here in the future, and there is no sun, and this is the only place I had to go, that this was my escape place, that life got so fucked up bad. And even to this day, right now I'm 3 hours away from this area, so it's kind of far. But if I needed to go someplace where I could drink and be out of the way of the shit, this would be it. It's just like I would go to that area. And that cave was just really a nice place. After the flood I was in, it was horrible. But it was nature kicking me out, telling me I had to stop being a runaway fugitive and go back home. And then I found this therapy, which I started anyway, so that was this whole thing. But it was an era of living that way. Now, we had met other people that walked out there that knew about it. One time there was a guy that walked by there. He sat and had dinner with us, and he moved on, because whoever's there first gets to stay there, I guess. And I don't know, right now there could be a family living there and all cozy and everything. I don't know. So, for example, when I was there in 78, I didn't go back until I went back with my partner in 1980, maybe 88. We drove out there and walked, and he walked with me out here. And we found, when I escaped from that, when I finally walked out of here, like Jesus walking on water, because I did the impossible getting out of here, I had a guitar and I left it in the cave. It was a classical guitar, but I just didn't feel like I could make the journey out because it was still flood water and all that. So I left the guitar there. But 10 years later, I came back and the guitar was still hanging on the wall of the cave where the big nail was in. And this guy named Manuel had carved his name into it. That was so trippy to see that the guitar was still there after 10 years. I kid you not. So I don't know right now if there's anybody there, but I'm just making this video because I'm not trying to not be a hypocrite with having secrets, because there's this thing about secrecy. I always, I'm on this like, disclosure train, no secrets, but there is a time to have secrets, and it's up to you and God, I guess, when you reveal secrets. Like, I have things I haven't told the world and I don't want to, but then, somebody else would say, oh, you're enabling the situation by not talking about it. Well, see, that always kind of comes up as a thing. But just now I was watching all these YouTube videos of these homeless people looking for places to stay. And then there's people without cars, because really, if you don't have a car, you're even more safe, because why? Or, like, I can just see, okay, somebody might have a Jeep or 4-wheel drive, and they might want to come down and live here. So instead of going to those hot springs, oh, stop it. I don't know why that's there. That's odd. I don't remember saving that. But anyway, I'll show you guys how to get there. You can walk this route too, but see, this is Big Dry Creek. And you'll notice that oh my God, it runs into, what am I doing? It runs into the Highway 180. Yeah, where's that? Oh, jeeps. Can't be way out here. I'm losing my sense of direction. Where's the road? I pushed the thing to show me all the landmarks and it just won't do it. Anyway, if you're traveling, I'm giving explicit instructions. I guess this is what I thought I would never do. I'd be like, oh, go to the Frisco Hot Springs and then you'll find this cave. And, I just coveted it, like this little secret place that, see, because I have so much like past life stuff here and all this future dreams drama with it that, it's like you covet the things you love sometimes. But now I'm like, hey man, if I loved it that much, somebody else might. And actually live out there and not be bothered by the rangers. Now, I don't think anybody would come out and kick you out, is the point. Anyway, that's kind of a long video. It's 30, what is it? But this is helping me relax today. So that's it. If you want to live somewhere in the wilderness where it's comfortable and there's a really cool cave, I just described a little bit about how to get there. If anyone sees this video and has any questions, you can ask me. If anybody actually sees this video and finds himself rushing out there like some people do, they just rush out to places. If you put it online, let me know if you go out there and dig the floor of the cave and find anything buried under there, because that would be mine. My shoes. I made them. They're blue suede moccasins. Short, just short ones. That's the goal I have, is to get those shoes back. And then so that it doesn't get dug up 2,000 years from now. Okay. All right, channel. Well, that's all for today. And, it's Easter, so they say. Okay, well, there you go.